Welcome to Rooted with Power, a podcast where we talk about the environment and we talk about health. I'm your host, Braden Power, and what we're going to be talking about today is diets. So, when I think of diets, there's three main ones that come to mind. First is the carnivore diet, which has been really popular recently, I would say, where you just eat a lot of meat, you do a ton of lifting, and you're just going to gain muscle mass and you're going to get the physique you want. Second is the keto diet. I'm going to cut out carbs and I'm going to get the weight that I've always wanted. And third is just the classic calorie tracker. I'm going to eat less food, so I'm going to lose weight. And while these three diets can be super beneficial and there are tons of people that can follow them, there's probably a lot more people that can't. And I'm one of those people. I really struggle getting rid of a ton of foods that I'm not supposed to eat in these diets. And it's really hard for me to track every single thing that I'm consuming. So that's where the diet that I follow comes in. And this is called the Snackless diet. Now, I would probably say it's the simplest diet plan I've found, except for I guess just eating whatever I want. But this is a pretty foundational diet, and it's not common sense, but it may seem like it. So what we're going to get into this episode is what is the Snackless diet? And then we're going to talk about how it works and what's the science behind it. And then we're going to talk about some counter arguments and why you shouldn't follow this diet and like why snacks are beneficial. And then we're going to talk about some like the main positive effects from this diet, or I guess some of the other things that you can get from this. So first, what is the Snackless diet? So it's pretty much as the name implies. You just don't eat snacks. It's pretty foundational. It doesn't seem hard to follow. So if I were following this diet, which I do, what I would do throughout my day is I would wake up, I would eat my breakfast, and then I would not eat anything until it's lunchtime. And at lunchtime, I would eat my sandwich or whatever I take to work, and then I would wait and not eat till supper. And then I would eat at supper, and then I would be done for the night. No bedtime snacks, no late night munchies, And then I would wake up the next morning and do the same thing. Now, this sounds super easy, and it's not, I wouldn't say it's super easy, but once you get into the habit of doing it, you don't crave food outside of these times. So, what is the science behind it, or why would the Snackless diet work? Well, first of all, we've been doing it for a long time, and until the population started to develop more snack foods, I guess, which I would probably say would be in the mid to late 1900s, people would just eat 3 times a day and that would be it. So it's worked historically, and I think if you would talk to people, older people, they would say my parents would not let me just eat in the middle of the day. Maybe, I don't know, I wasn't alive back then. But what does it do in your body? So when we take in food, we break that down, and there's these things called carbohydrates, which we hear about a lot. So when we break down carbohydrates, glucose is produced in our body. Now, glucose is great. Works wonders in our body. It provides, I would say, raw materials for our body to do cellular respiration, which produces energy. And this energy is used in all of our cells, and that's how we can function. So these carbohydrates are great. They produce glucose, which is the raw material for energy in our body. And so we need it. It's essential. But the main thing in this diet that we're going to look at is the glucose levels in your blood. So when that glucose comes into your body, it raises the amount or measurement of glucose that's in your blood. So, and that's what we assign or label as blood sugar, and it's also called blood glucose levels, which is probably what I will refer to it as. So, your blood glucose levels are like anything else in your body. It has to be maintained at a certain level, and outside that level, it can have some negative effects on other functions in your body. And this is called homeostasis, when your body maintains a certain level of a measurement or function in your body. And what maintains your blood glucose level is a combination of your kidney and your liver, but we're going to mostly talk about the liver. So, you take in glucose, your blood glucose level raises. When that happens, the hormone insulin is triggered. And what insulin does is it tells your liver that we have too much glucose in our blood. And so the liver takes some of that glucose and stores it. After the glucose is stored, the blood glucose level can come back down to normal. And the glucose in your liver is stored as glycogen. And glycogen is a readily available source of glucose in your body. But it does have a limited amount. So when you store the glycogen and you still have too much glucose in your blood, then that's when it starts getting stored as body fat. And that's where we run into problems. So for me, in my diet, my goal is to maintain my body fat, or to kind of stay at the same weight level. So this is really where this pathway comes into play. So insulin is causing you to store glucose as glycogen, and then if you exceed your stores, it gets stored as fat. But when you're going throughout your day, if you continue to consume glucose and you've already reached your maximum glycogen, then you continue to add fat. So that's where we see the negative effects of snacking. If I eat breakfast in the morning, consume carbohydrates, turn into glucose, and then they reach the maximum amount of stores I can have in my body. Then I have a snack at 10 a.m. and I add more glucose to my body. Then this glucose starts being stored as fat. And then at lunch, if I add some more, and then a snack in the afternoon, I add some more, and then comes supper time, and I'm just still adding more fat to my body because I've already reached the amount of glycogen. Now, it's not that simple, but for our purposes, that's how a broken down or basic version, I would say, of the glucose storage in our body. But the good thing is we don't always add glucose. So what our body does is, outside of when you're eating, your blood glucose level drops because you need to function. You need to have these processes in your body that need energy. So after you eat, your body, you start moving around your hands like I do a lot. And so this starts using glucose. And so then your blood glucose level starts to drop. And then what your body does is it has this store of glycogen, and it just breaks that down, and then you have more free glucose in your blood. And then your blood glucose can be maintained, and you can have enough energy, and you can feel good throughout the day. And then you eat again, and these stores are replenished. And you can maintain your homeostasis throughout the day, and you're doing good. But if you exceed this level, then that's when the fat starts to kick in. But the good thing about storing this fat is if it's stored, it can also be used. So in your activities, or just just being alive, I guess, use glucose. So it reduces the glycogen stores in your body. And then once these glycogen stores get low enough, then you can break into your fat stores. And there are some scientific names for this process of breaking down or getting into other stores other than your glycogen is called gluconeogenesis. And you can look that up. It's once your body has reduced the amount of glycogen stores because it's needed energy from glucose, then you get into your fat stores. And that's really where this diet can take effect. So if you wake up in the morning, you eat your breakfast, you get a store of glycogen, and then by, let's say, 11 a.m., those glycogen stores are out. Then your body will break into fat burning mode. And then you'll burn some fat, but then you'll be you'll be hungry by lunchtime. And then you'll replenish your stores and you'll make it to supper. And then you eat supper, and after supper, you have this really long period of time that you're not eating. And that's really when we can see some fat usage. So if you eat supper at 6 and then you wake up and let's say eat breakfast at 7, that's about 11 hours, I think, where you're not eating. So in that 11 hours, your body can break down that glycogen, and then it can get into those fat stores. And that's where we see the effects of not eating a late night snack. So now that we've talked about the basics of storing glucose and turning it into fat, and then using that fat and using that glycogen throughout your day, I want to go back and talk a little bit more about insulin. Now, insulin is a very important hormone, and I've heard about it a ton, but I didn't really know that much about it, so I went to my biology class this year. And so what insulin does is it's triggered when our blood glucose levels are too high, and it tells our liver to store glucose, like I said earlier. Now, these insulin levels can be tracked in our bodies, and they rise when we need to store when we need to store glucose. And once enough glucose is stored, or once our homeostasis is maintained, these insulin levels start to drop. But what insulin does when it needs to store glucose is it inhibits these processes that break down glycogen and use it, and break down fat and use it. Because to bring our blood glucose level back to a regular amount, we don't need to add more. So these insulin levels, after they've spiked, after you've eaten and enough glucose has been stored, then they start to go back down. Now, if you have a snack, though, after eating this large meal and spiking those glucose and insulin levels, then you snack and your insulin levels shoot back up again. And those insulin levels then block the breakdown of the glycogen, and they block the breakdown of fats. And then you have to wait until these insulin levels go down to break into these other energy stores. And that's where snacking becomes a big problem, is when these insulin levels spike, then we don't use as much of all this energy that we've already stored up and all this fat that we already have. And so if a person would just continue to snack like a lot of us do, and I have done, is it just keeps spiking our insulin, and then we don't really get into breaking down those stores and using that energy that our body has naturally set apart for us. And so that's why this 3-block or time, like certain timed eating, comes into play. So it allows time in between those meals for this glucose stores, glycogen and fats, to be burned and used. And some people have called it intermittent fasting, and intermittent fasting is a little bit more serious. It's allowing more time in between a eating time in the day, but it can be kind of related to this. I would not call this fasting, but some of the same ideas and concepts apply. So in fasting, you're allowing your body time to break down the immediate stores that you already have in glycogen, and then you're allowing it to get to the fat stores. And that's why fasting is seen as like a cleansing or a cleansing method. Is you're breaking down these fat stores and just kind of getting everything out of your body. So that can be related back to this time waiting in between meals, because you're allowing time for your body to get through those stores and kind of get some other energy that you don't really need to add out of your body. And this storage is not a bad thing. It's natural, and it's like how our bodies function, because like through evolution we can see that if we go back to caveman times, I guess, they didn't have food whenever they wanted to. And that's where these fat stores really came in, is if they could go a long period without replenishing their energy, and they could still break down these fat stores and have what they needed to continue to survive and hunt and things. And so that's what can be kind of seen as not beneficial for us now, is we have immediate, or I shouldn't say immediate, but we have easy access to food, so we don't really need to have these big storages piled up. In summary, so we take in food and we take in carbohydrates, and this gets broken down into glucose, and we have a level of glucose that needs to be maintained in our body for proper function. And when this increases due to the consumption of carbohydrates, our glucose level goes above the homeostasis average, and insulin is triggered to start storing some of that glucose. Now the glucose is stored in glycogen, then fat, and then when our insulin levels decrease low enough, we start breaking into those stores. And when we break into those stores, we can start using that energy and pulling that energy out to function as normal. And so that's why I can see, or I've seen benefits in this diet, is because I'm allowing my body to do its natural processes of storing when I eat meals and using that energy that it's stored after my meals. So I'm keeping or maintaining the amount of fat in my body because I'm allowing my usual like activities, like a little bit of exercise, just walking, things like that, to use these glycogen and then fat stores that I've gotten from eating. And so that's where I see benefits in this snackless diet, is because you're just allowing your body to do what it's supposed to and what it can do efficiently and what we've seen it do efficiently. And I do want to talk about one more thing with this snackless diet, is although I've said eating a lot, that you just don't have to eat between these meal times, I do want to point out that when you look at sugary drinks or drinks other than water really, there are carbohydrates in those foods. So taking in, like, if you say, oh, I'm just not snacking, but I can drink a Mountain Dew in the afternoon, that doesn't actually help, because you take in that Mountain Dew and then that releases glucose, and then your insulin is spiked again. And even milk has carbohydrates in it. So for me to be really strictly following this diet, I would say, is I try not to drink anything other than water in between my meal times. And then at my meal times, I can have milk. I can have those drinks, but between, I'm not consuming anything other than water. And going back to my restrictions, I guess, there's not really many. When I look at my meals, I haven't really changed what I've eaten a lot. And I'm in college, and so I have full access to buffets for my food. And I don't know if I've eaten more than I usually would. I would probably eaten about the same or less, but for me, the impact has really been seen in not eating like a Chex Mix or a bag of Cheetos between those times where I'm going to the dining hall and eating a good amount of food. And so even though I am consuming maybe more calories, I'm allowing my body to break down those stores and not keeping it at this level where it's just focused on adding more storage for later. I'm allowing those times in between to break into my fat and glucose stores. And so I want to go through some maybe other diets that kind of counteract this. And one of those is the idea that like 6 small meals a day aren't is beneficial and can help with weight loss. Now, I haven't done a ton of research on this, but what I've learned about the 6 small meals a day is the point of the plan is to decrease your caloric intake in a day. So eat less food, but eat it at multiple time increments through the day. And because you're eating it at multiple time increments in the day or more, you're supplementing your feel for hunger throughout the day. And that can be beneficial, but it would be very tough, I think, to limit the amount of calories you're eating in those snacks. And there's been very mixed results from these diets. And the hunger thing is also something I want to get into. So there's hunger hormones in your body that tell you when your glycogen stores and you don't have immediate energy ready. And there's also hormones that tell you what time of day you're going to be hungry. And what I don't know a ton about this, the different hormones and what they do, but I will say your body is not just going to shut down because you don't have energy, because you do. And unless you're like super small or a super small percentage of body fat, your body has stored energy that it can access and break down. Now, it may take a little longer and it takes energy to actually get that out, but it does have energy, and it's not just going to let your body shut down. And continuing on with this is also looking at what you would usually be snacking on. So if you're out for when I usually think of a snack, I usually think of there's these like peanut butter sandwich crackers, which are pretty good, and then chocolate chip granola bars and Chex Mix. Now, those are my 3 go-tos, and they are not the best for me. And while I wish I could say I would usually just go grab an apple and eat that, I wouldn't. And if you're snacking healthy like that, like eating fruits and vegetables out of your snacks, it may be beneficial every once in a while. But when our usual snack is something that's going to add a lot of carbohydrates and calories to our body, it's not beneficial to have those small meals throughout your day. Or not meals, but small snacks throughout your day. And so another benefit of this snackless diet is your snack intake is not usually the most healthy and not beneficial to your body. So decreasing or just taking out those snacks is also beneficial. And you might even save a little bit of money because snacks are pretty expensive, I think, for what you're getting. And so lastly, to kind of wrap this up, I want to go back to what I talked about at the start. And so this diet, I see it as super simple, and I wouldn't say easy to follow, but once you get in the habit, you're just going. And so that's where I compare it to the carnivore diet, keto diet, and calorie tracker. Is I don't have to be super strict on what I'm eating. Now, it may take out some of those unhealthy snack foods, but there's not a lot of things I'm saying like I can't eat at all. And also, I don't have to track my calories or my macros throughout the day, because I know as long as I'm eating in those times, then I'm probably not going to be eating that excess amount of calories that I don't need. And so that's where I really see the benefit in this snackless diet. Is it may not be your go-to for the rest of your life, and you might not even see like weight loss benefits with it, but it will be easier because you'll have the discipline of not eating between meals to go into maybe one of those more extensive diets. And once you get into those diets, I think having or not having snacks can be beneficial in helping those diets too. So that's where I think I'm going to end this. And so I want to thank you guys for watching.